Hey, Bum, thanks for joining us.
Oh, no problem. I've went to a number of your sessions throughout Indian country and the ones you used to have in Polson. One of the things that's happening here, of course, is our schools are shut down at Fort Belknap. They're going to remain shut down for the remainder of the year, and the school districts have really stepped up. They're providing lunches to school children, both breakfast and noon hour. School ends here in Fort Belknap and around Montana early, maybe than some other states. They finish school around anywhere between May 17th to the 22nd. A situation that's going to face us here shortly is that the school children, they do have a hot summer lunch program, but that doesn't start till June 8th. We've got a 2 weeks lapse of maybe facing the possibility of school children not having any access to those meals for that 2 week period. So that's one situation that we'll be facing. The other one is, excuse me, USDA. I don't know how the lunches are going out to the seniors now. We've been in shelter for about 45 days, but I'm assuming that senior citizen meals are becoming low too in terms of items for the meal, and how can we get more meals to them, because sometimes that's the only meal that they get for the day. So we're looking at a 2 week period before the summer hot lunch program gets going for the the schools. How can we bring more supplies in to get our senior citizens well stocked? And we are getting food coming in to some of the centers, but it's not enough. And it's only enough for that day or the next 3 days. We need freezers for our senior citizen centers so they can store meat that's coming in. The need is there. The tribe over here at Belknap harvested 11 buffalo, and in one area on our reservation, the community of Hayes, that meat was gone. Their share of the meat was gone in 15 minutes. So those three items, school hot lunch program, how we're going to do that for the 2 weeks for the kids, how we're going to do that for the summer for our senior citizens and elders, and looking for some storage for be able to freeze meat and stuff. That's my concern and questions. Thank you.
Very good questions, Bum, and we share your concerns, especially with regard to the school lunch program. And I know here on Cheyenne River, our school lunch program folks all deserve a Congressional Medal of Honor for the work getting food out to the kids in spite of the fact the kids aren't in the school. Honestly, this is the first we've heard of that lapse time maybe being an issue. So we will definitely flag that and add that to our list of emergency asks as quick as we can. We'll also work with our existing connections in the food distribution realm to see if there's anything we can do there. Towards the concept of need for increased storage, there are some USDA programs that can be used to access cold storage, specifically the farm program, farm loan or farm storage program has low interest loans that helps with that. And I know loans is probably the last dang thing a senior citizens or a school lunch program need, but the fact that the program exists out there might give us a conduit to where we could have some of the appropriations directed into grants or other things. There's also the community facilities program that exists through rural development. That might be something that the Fort Belknap tribe could apply for to increase storage. And I just want to start by saying that while coronavirus is the current crisis, all of these things that are being illustrated just show us how truly fragile our food systems are in Indian country, more so than in other places. And while we look to address the short-term acute issues, rest assured that we're really looking at long-term solutions for all of these things so that we don't have to be victim to the next thing that comes around. We'll have our local food supply kind of dialed in, hopefully in the next few years, to where this isn't an issue, which really ties into the Native Farm Bill Coalition work that we started with the last Farm Bill in partnership with the Indigenous Food and Ag Initiative. So we've got a list of long-term solutions that's longer than my arm that we'll gladly share and try to rally some support. Bum, if you haven't already, and if you wouldn't mind, go in and punch those into our survey that we've got on indianag.org, because we just had a request from a couple of the congressional delegations for access to some of the information that we're gathering in those surveys, because it's more timely than the NAS surveys that we all hopefully are filling out. So if you wouldn't mind punching that in, it takes a little bit of your time, and I think we've got enough folks online now that we can announce it. We're going to do a drawing for a $200 Visa gift card for folks that complete that survey on an ongoing basis every 2 weeks, to try to incentivize participation a little bit, and maybe put just a little reward for your help in assisting the IAC in crafting some solutions. So that's a good question. We don't have any immediate answers, but we're definitely going to share your concerns across our network and with the congressional delegations that we have a chance to visit with, Bum.
Great. Are there any other questions? I don't see anything in the chat box or any other hands raised. So maybe that can tie into the surveys. You kind of shared some information about the COVID-19 surveys and how the data, how you'll be using the data received. Is there a deadline for those surveys? How soon are you needing that?
Thanks, Natasha. That's a good question. And we want to continue to gather this information as frequently as our service population can stand. We understand there's a lot of people trying to get their mind around what's happening in Indian country and other places with respect to the crisis. So as much as we can, we're trying to redirect this back to the really systemic issues that are going to rise up, whether it's a regional natural disaster or a national crisis like we're in right now. The same weaknesses are going to be laid bare, and we've got to make sure that we are building systems that address that. Some of the biggest, the hot button items are financing, funding options. Nearly everybody that's replied, well, over 50% of the respondents have said that they're going to have decreased demand in their product, and the products that are grown are kind of tracking pretty much with the ag census numbers. We've got a couple of folks that are interested in using our data to help us put together some studies, and we think that'll be of tremendous value to Indian country and beyond as well. So please get out there, fill out the surveys, and help us shape the solutions that come out the other end of this crisis.
Great. Yeah, and that ties into, like last week you were talking about you had a discussion on Facebook about the Farm Ranch Help Initiative, where IAC is working to propose legislation for the next round of COVID-19 relief. How can producers get involved with that, and how do they make their voices heard as well? Is there a deadline on that as well, like where they can sign in or submit support letters?
Yeah, good. Am I muted? Let's see, we're good. No deadline on that either. And until we get some relief, we're going to keep soliciting input and trying to get folks out in the countryside to make noise and share it with their congressional delegations. We've had a few of the congressional delegations reach back out to us after our work last week, so I think we're making a difference. Tomorrow, we're gonna publish the organization letter with all of the sign-ons that we've received so far, and that is specific to the lower ag loan payments for our borrowers. 80,000 Native American borrowers, and most of them that we know do have some form of ag debt. So payment deferrals on their ag debt for the next 2 years, and easing access to the farm service agencies farm ownership loan program to help them refinance and leverage their equity are the two that we talked most about last week. And really it comes down to the fact that most of our producers exist in what we identify as credit deserts. And that's the fundamental problem. Most of our producers are paying more for the money they're borrowing, and it's challenging to make the payments and make that interest payment. So what we're proposing is not to make the principal payment for a couple of years, just pay the interest and kind of keep that money circulating in our economies. The broader commodity markets are really out of anyone's control. So instead of trying to focus on that, if we can help you improve your financial situation, you might be able to look at developing your product in the value added market a little bit, as we see more and more meat producers doing right now. Maybe some of the grain producers can start to get together and add some value to their product, and the fruit and vegetable folks as well. There's another, in that list of legislative priorities that we're putting forward, some of them are tied directly to feeding people. And in the CARES Act, there was $50 million appropriated for facility improvements and equipment upgrades, and $50 million for food purchases in the FDIPR program. Those have not rolled out yet, but we're waiting and trying to be positioned where we can capitalize on that and help get some Native American food into our FDIPR programs. There's currently a prohibition on dual use of SNAP and FDIPR during the same month. We're trying to get that prohibition waived during this crisis. The simple fact of the matter is the FDIPR stores, the FDIPR warehouses are in jeopardy of running out of product. And because someone selected FDIPR as their chosen form of helping to feed their family, we don't want that to cost them the opportunity to keep food in the cupboard. We're talking about trying to increase SNAP's maximum benefit for all households by 15% and delay implementation of the proposed and final SNAP rules that are just frankly a little bit mean-spirited, and punish those in need the most. We're also looking for tribal parity and eligibility for tribal governments and Indian tribal organizations in the Emergency Food Assistance Program. And we're trying to help the policymakers understand when they're contemplating feeding Indian country, it needs to be done through the lens of the ag census, so we know what's out there in Indian country. For example, it doesn't make much sense to try to purchase avocados to feed to folks up here in the northern tier states where we grow mostly livestock. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to try to purchase apples to feed to our brothers and sisters on the southern border at Ducheneaux that raise great tepary beans and pinto beans. So be thoughtful about that and really regionalize those opportunities so that tribes and tribal consumers can take advantage of them. Latasha mentioned some of the advocacy pieces that we've got on the webpage. In addition to the survey that we hope you all fill out, we've also got an organizational sign-on letter where the organizations in your community can sign on to the legislative proposals, and producer letters for the same thing. We've got draft tribal resolutions for you to share with your tribal lawmakers. We've even got a script up there where you can call your congressional delegation and share your concerns, share the details of your story in that conversation. Because what really resonates with our congressional delegation, more so than me shooting my mouth off here on the internet, is a call from their constituents or a letter emailed from their constituents. Believe it or not, those all make a difference. And there is a great opportunity for you to be heard in that vein. Also on the website, we've got a list of your congressional representatives and senators. You can click that link and it'll pull up their address and their contact information. Call them at all levels. Reach out to your local delegation. Every senator and every congressional delegation has representatives that stay in the state, and they've got dedicated staff working over there in DC as well. So please reach out to all of those.
Thank you so much for that. And does anyone have any questions right now? If you want to, you can go totally raise your hand again or place your questions in the chat or Q&A section. If not, we're just going to keep going and visiting some questions that we received earlier. One of the questions is this pandemic has exposed vulnerabilities in how we get our food and how it's processed and distributed. With all the market changes, what is IAC doing to help producers adapt? And you mentioned some of your advocacy work, some of the legislative works that you're doing. Is there any other activities?
Yes, absolutely. So all along, we've had the American Indian Foods Program, and we've worked to help producers that have shelf-ready products navigate the export market. There's been funding available for that, and the IAC has administered a program aimed at that since the 90s. That program doesn't exist for the domestic market, so we've been working to try to build some bridges in the domestic market between our producers and our consumers. The crew at the American Indian Foods Program and our development team have put together the Native Food Connection, where we're trying to build that bridge between our producers and our consumers in a way that it's wide enough for new producers to get on there as well. Part of that involves helping producers access capital that can get them into a value-added ag product. There's not much use to our community members for a cow or a buffalo on the hoof. So what we need to do is put together the pieces that help us get that processed and delivered to our community without the added expense of transportation and capitalizing on the processing cost locally, where it's going to create some employment. So Latasha and Courtney are working a lot on that. Another component of that, though, is to work on developing a e-commerce capability for Indian producers, so that we could have a website that's almost like Amazon Food for Indian country, where you could click on Ramona Farms, shop right there, have it get shipped to your doorstep, and the transaction all happens right there in the comfort of your home. Or you could do it at your local community center for those of us that don't have great access to broadband. The possibilities are limitless with the logistics of these big corporations that we have, and it's maybe time to capitalize on that and try to bring that to Indian country using the model that the American Indian Foods Program has developed. In that same program, we also offer the made or produced by American Indians trademark. And we're working to try to broaden that trademark and build more verification processes in there, so that we could potentially corner the market on country of origin labeling for meat products. If we are able to develop a process through which we can use our staff to go out and verify the origin and processing of animals and other products, we can use that value-added label to really target not just our own people as consumers, but the American public, who's becoming more and more aware of where their food comes from and just how vulnerable they are as well to the fragile food systems.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are more conscious and about the traceability. I think that's becoming more important to them more than ever nowadays. The next question is, IAC has been busy with webinar development. What other resources are being developed to educate and inform producers?
Hold on. Okay, there we go. So in addition to the webinars, we've got a lot of other initiatives that we're working on. One of the things that has long been a bone of contention with our crew here at the Intertribal Ag Council, our board and our staff and our membership is this notion that we need to be taught regenerative agriculture. And finally, the American public is starting to talk about the concept. And we've kind of been leading the way in Indian country with regard to these regenerative practices, starting back with the Three Sisters Gardens and the way we managed the grazing herds on the plains. So we were able to bring on a regenerative ag specialist, an advisor actually, in the last few weeks with the help of our friends over at the Cedar Tree Foundation to really build some models that are regionally relevant through our natural resource department, regenerative grazing, regenerative gardening, all of these things that help enhance soil health, because that enhanced soil health is going to lead to more productivity and more economy for our producers, and frankly, probably better health for the consumers of our food. Another initiative that we're working on is and it ties back to financing, an alternative method for financing. We want to start financing agriculture on a return on investment basis instead of a lending basis. And we're doing that through our CDFI that we were able to create with the support of our board of directors, called Occupan, that's headquartered here in Eagle Butte, South Dakota, but is loaned or financed money, financed food production all across the country, and as far east as North Carolina and far west as Portland.
Yep, so busy. I mean, we may not be there in person, but everyone seems to continue to move along. The next question is, SBA has opened an ag-only loan application window, and I believe you guys shared that on the IAC Facebook page. What other available resources are available to producers that could meet their needs, whether it be financing or, yeah, just I believe financing.
The SBA stuff is really a tight fit for producers right now. And it's kind of, everything's happening after the fact. And again, we probably should add a number that folks can call at the USDA to ask them when that assistance is going to really come out the door. But Carrie and I were just visiting about this SBA economic injury disaster loan program, and it's open right now for only ag producers, but it's confusing because it doesn't appear as though there was anybody with any ag background that helped them build their application process. It's an entirely online application process. You can do a written version as well, but I presume they're taking it as a first come, first served basis. So if you don't have access to the technology or the technological ability to fill that out, get in touch with our staff and we can walk you through, even submit that application for you with your information. The challenging part is, like we said, there's no mention of Schedule F or farm and ranch expenses in there. So we have to be thoughtful about how we make that application. The PPP, which is Payroll Protection Program, only 18% of the 80,000 farmers and ranchers in Indian country that responded to the NASS survey responded as having any farm employees, including themselves. And that's one of the other challenges that we're trying to overcome, is to help our people understand we are small businessmen, and the money we spend out of our operation, we should start to qualify it as payroll or salary because it's a deductible expense. You know, if we just take our calf sale or our produce sale money and go buy groceries, we don't get the credit for paying ourselves a salary for that, like some of our other ag producers do. So that's important. And the rest of the question was, so let's talk a little bit about the Commodity Credit Corporation and the assistance that the USDA still has yet to roll out the door. That is right now being tied to actual loss in sales due to the crisis. We're at the beginning of the growing season in most of the nation, so we really don't know how that's going to play out. None of the congressional delegations that we've had conversations with really understand how the USDA is going to implement that, and they're seeking clarity just like we are. So that's yet to happen. There's the Coronavirus Food Access Program that was rolled out last week with an application deadline of, I believe, Monday. So we chose not to put in an application, but what we're going to do is put in an ad hoc application or proposal to the USDA to serve as that distribution point for our producers that might have some food to provide to their community. And we would serve as the distribution center for that. So that's another of the options. But again, can't stress enough how important it is for you out there in the audience to call your congressional delegation, call your state, local, federal government officials and say, these things aren't reaching Indian country yet. And we need to know how, and we need to know when. And mention the things that you've heard the IAC talk about and bring that to their attention as well.
Great, thank you. Is there any questions before I move on to the next question? You could either, again, for those that joined us just recently, you could either place your question in the Q&A box or the chat box, or you can raise your hand and we can unmute you and you could ask questions directly to Zach. If there are no questions, we can move on to the next one we have here. It says IAC and Quapaw worked together recently on a method to eliminate food waste. Can you elaborate on this collaboration?
Absolutely, and this ties back to the network that the IAC has and why we feel that we're ideally positioned to be a clearinghouse of information and assistance. Probably 3 weeks ago, one of our staff members received a text from one of our great NRCS tribal liaisons, and they were talking about how NRCS staff are being trained on how to implement new programs that would assist in the disposal of euthanized animals that can't make it into the food system. So we reached out through our network and talked to our state conservationist friends and our friends at Quapaw to see if we could maybe avoid having to incur the cost of disposal and the waste of that food. And true to form, our friends at the Quapaw tribe said, we're sure we can help. We're not sure yet how, but give us a couple minutes and we'll make some calls. So as of yesterday, we've got one semi-load of hogs that the IAC is going to purchase at a discount price and ship to Quapaw for them to process at their expense and distribute in their community. We've also got another producer or two that are interested in donating their hogs to the IAC in return for the tax deduction of donating to a 501c3. And we don't feel like that's something that can only be limited to hogs. There's, as we understand it from our staff in the Northwest, there's fruit and vegetables that's on the verge of getting ready to be disposed of. And we got to imagine that there's a lot of that all across the country. So if you know of any places where food waste is getting ready to happen, we might have an opportunity where producers can realize a deferred value to that through a donation to a 501c3.
That is pretty big. And then the product will be either distributed to places that are in need. You said that's awesome. So yeah, like if there are any other questions, we have a few more people that joined us. If you have questions to ask Zach, you can enter it in the chat box, or the Q&A, or raise your hand before I move on to the next question. I'll give it a second so I'm not speeding through. All right, no questions just yet. Okay, so the next one is with all the uncertainty and pandemic disruptions, is IAC planning on hosting the annual conference in Las Vegas this year?
We're in negotiation with our host hotel, formerly the Hard Rock, going to be Virgin Hotels Las Vegas, about how and when we need to make that decision. And we've decided internally that we're going to try to have that decision made by the 1st of June, but definitely the 1st of July, because we want to make sure that we don't close the door on the opportunity too soon, because there's a lot of good that comes from that conference. If we should have to cancel it, we are paying special attention to some of our brother and sister organizations that have had to cancel their events, and observing how their virtual conferences go, so that we could be ready to still engage a bunch of experts and reach out to our friends and relatives out here amongst our member tribes and get that good information out there to you. And the great thing about that, we like to try to find opportunity in even the most dire of circumstances. That would let us really build a huge online library of webinar type media, like you can find on our website at indianag.org/events. Just looking at the things that are coming up, we've got an overview of the Canadian market. We've got another discussion about beef marketing. We've got plant restoration and innovation, doing business in the Canadian retail market, connecting lenders with vendors. So there's all of those type of things that you normally only get exposure to when we have in-person events. We're trying to find a way to bring those to you right there in the comfort and safety of your home.
Yeah, and I think the unique thing is that eventually we're trying to build that curriculum aspect. So we should have a e-learning platform here eventually. And so that's where all of our producers and membership can go and visit whenever they are looking for resources or guides or just toolkits. That's another option. So I think the IC has been really adapting to the current situation, but it's been an interesting time for sure.
That's absolutely true. And I'll just talk a little more about some of the initiatives that we're working on. I see some of our friends that are on the list of participants and attendees, and I want to thank you all for taking the time. A couple of our staff are there, and then we've also got some of our friends in the FERTEP realm. We've not forgotten about our commitment to our brothers and sisters that are federally recognized tribal extension program administrators. And in all of our conversations, we are sharing the wishes of FERTEP to have that 2-year extension for existing FERTEP programs, so that we don't have to try to get those applications out the door in this time of crisis and work from home. So you guys are all on our mind there. And I see we've got someone from the CSKT tribal credit program. A large part, as we've said quite a bit, of our work is trying to develop better access for our local credit providers. Sometimes the neighborhood bank isn't the best deal, and our native CDFIs and our tribal credit programs have a better feel and more comfort for the communities and the members of those communities that we serve. And we're doing everything we can to improve access to more affordable credit so that we can pass that on to those folks that need it at terms that they can use it a little more readily. Who else we got on here? I see we've got our board member, James McCuen, on the line with us. James, I hope all is going well. And if you were of a mind and wanted to share some of your thoughts, we would sure welcome the chance to share in some of your wisdom.
Yes, I think, Courtney, if you want to go ahead and unmute him.
I know James sometimes has challenges with access to broadband. He often drives up to the top of a hill to have a board meeting. There he is. You there, James?
Yeah, I'm there now. Yeah, I got a couple things that I hope you guys are working really hard on this new dang whatever that $1 trillion or $1 billion or whatever amount on all those programs that kind of fit into our realm on with the tribes. And yeah, my dang computer is not fast. So, you know, those programs that they come out with, I hope we're getting the word out there to get our name in first. That seems like a big problem with this 19 deal. Is the money's gone before anybody else can get it. I just hope we're letting all the tribes know that. It's about, you know, you pretty well covered it there, Zach.
All right, James, we'll do our best to keep our website updated. Another announcement, and I don't know if we made this last week, we did bring on a marketing and help us project our presence a little better and have our information even more readily accessible for our members and for our constituents. Carrie Hofschneider is our new marketing and communication specialist, and she just started on Monday. So look for a little bit of a breath of fresh air in our marketing and PR coming soon.
Yes, any other comments or questions before I leave it to Zach to share any other additional updates? And as always, you can find any information or any current announcements on our webpage, like Zach mentioned, at indianag.org. I don't see.
We did actually have a question on Facebook. Someone had asked if we provide services for assisting with SBA forms.
Absolutely. And if you want to go to the website and go to, I'll do it right here. Go to our website, click on we've got a technical assistance program, and your regional staff member is listed on that website. Their phone number is there. You can email them from that page as well. And you can also reach out to any of us at the national office for assistance in filling those applications out, up to and including sharing your information and us typing it in for you. We understand that, like our board member, Mr. McCuen, sometimes you might not have the broadband access you need, so we're ready to help. Good question. Thank you very much.
Great. Oh, he's muted.
Courtney, put that link in the chat box for any of you that have access there.
Great. Well, I don't think we have any other questions right now. And if, as always, just send those over to info@Indian Ag as well. And this concludes our webinar. I'm so glad everyone was able to join. If there's any last comments, I know we have Carrie on board and Courtney and Zach.
I guess my comment is I encourage people to reach out to our TAs or to call myself if you're going through those SBA forms and have any questions. My husband, I assisted him on filling out the form, and we had to call our tax man and try to decipher what a lot of the terms were alluding to, and we filled it out the best we can, and I think we got it pretty close. So I'll be following up, trying to do some more studying and getting that exactly right. But you know, time is of the essence, so I encourage everybody to try and get in there and fill it out timely, you know. So, but we're here to help, and we'll do the best we can.
And we do have another question here. Hello, and thank you for the webinars. I've been wondering if I do CSA type produce boxes weekly, if I have to go through the federal procurement process or straight through the local tribe.
That is a great question. So it depends on the product, and it depends on the jurisdiction within which you are doing it. Some products don't have that strict of regulation. Our friends over at the Indigenous Food and Ag Initiative, and I should have thanked Kenneth for the question. Our friends over at the Indigenous Food and Ag Initiative have developed model food and agriculture codes that we can offer to you at no cost, and your tribe could customize them so that then all of the work that we're doing is happening under tribal law, as opposed to having to worry about whether or not the state food inspector is going to come around the corner on you. Get that back open. If you want to participate in the food distribution program or SNAP, then yes, right now you would have to go through that federal procurement process. But we're working on that proposal to try to become that warehouse, if you will, where we could help facilitate that transaction locally without having to go through the federal procurement process.
Great. And then I have another question that was text over. It said, is it possible to get some help from you with the FDIPR for a cultivated wild rice product? FDIPR requires traditional harvested, which in no way or how can we get the numbers for what they're needing? Can we, is there something we can do to connect with USDA or talk with them to encourage more of a Native American or purchasing from only Native American tribes that cultivate wild rice?
Absolutely. And I think the question is not only wild grown wild rice, but also the cultivated stuff. But be that as it may, we've got some staff members that have been very involved in that process and helping producers get their product directly into the FDIPR program. And we can absolutely refer you to them if you want to get in touch with us and give us just a little more information about your particulars.
Great. Awesome. Nope, no more questions, I think. Did we get any more questions, Courtney?
Yes, so here's one more. I do all leafy greens and herbs for weekly harvest via hydroponics. Was hoping to skip the procurement as it's 3 hours away and doesn't say local, but I would have to provide for up to 100 to 300 miles as the local produce.
All right, so I think that, you know, a follow-up with Latasha and Courtney is definitely in order, because those seem like pretty exportable products. If you found a way to can your produce or further process your leafy greens, maybe we could get you into the export program and you could realize that high value price for them. But in the interim, if you're in the Great Plains region, reach out to Tommy and we can try to help you facilitate those transactions. And we can do a little more research on what the actual procurement process is for your local programs as well. I know there's a lot of farm to school initiatives that are funded throughout the country right now. Maybe we can help you get your product into that local school without having to go through that cumbersome process and feed your own community.
All right, definitely. I think we can have a good conversation meeting with Tommy and the rest of the AIF crew, and I think that would be a good starting point.
If there are no more questions, I'll go ahead and wrap us up and thank you all for your time. And if you have any questions that you would like to share offline that you just want to know for yourself, and feel free to reach out, zach@indianag.org. My personal cell phone number is 605-222-3852. And if I don't get it, leave a message and I'll get back to you. Courtney's got it there in the window now. Again, we're going to start to do a drawing every Friday for a $200 gift card for survey participation. So if you care to go fill out your survey, put your name in there and we'll enter you in that drawing. Share the survey with as many people as you can so that we can get a broader array of input, and know that that survey is going to be used to develop the programming that you need in your community based on what you tell us. With that, I would like to invite you all to check back in for the next webinar. And that one is going to be, oh, I had it open here. The next webinar should be on the 7th of May, and that's an overview of the Canadian market. So check back in, listen in on that. Keep looking in your email for updates from us and join our mailing list if you haven't yet. Thank you for your time, attendance, and questions. We look forward to seeing you soon. Stay safe and good luck.